71 million Americans. That's how many people are receiving Social Security checks right now, today, as you're watching this. And here's what not one of them knows: the money is running out. Not slowly, not eventually, not in some distant future that we can ignore. Right now, the combined Social Security trust funds lost $67 billion in 2024. That's not a projection. That's not a worst case scenario. That's not some think tank's estimate. That's the official 2025 Trustees Report, published by the Social Security Administration itself. The government's own accountants are telling you the system is bleeding money at an accelerating rate. And here's the part that should terrify you. The Old Age and Survivors Insurance Fund, the big one, the fund that pays retirement benefits to 63 million retirees, hits zero in 2033, 7 years from now, not a generation from now. Not your grandchildren's problem, 7 years. The moment that happens, benefits get cut by 23%. Automatic, immediate, locked in by law, no vote required, no congressional action needed. The law already says that when the trust fund balance hits zero, payments must equal incoming revenue, and incoming revenue only covers 77% of promised benefits, so everyone gets a 23% haircut. Everyone, no exceptions. But you want to know the real secret? That 23% cut is just the beginning, because what's coming isn't a benefits reduction. It's not a policy adjustment. It's not a temporary setback that we'll recover from in a few years. It's the systematic destruction of the largest entitlement program in human history. And it follows a pattern, a four-stage pattern that has obliterated every single promise-based system ever created. No exceptions, zero. Every government that has promised future payments to its citizens and failed to match those promises with sustainable funding has followed this exact same path. And right now in January 2026, we're deep into stage 3. I'm going to show you this pattern. I'm going to prove it with 3 historical examples from completely different countries, different political systems, different time periods. And then I'm going to show you exactly where Social Security is in that pattern right now, using the government's own data, the SSA's own projections. And once you see it, you'll understand why 71 million people are about to lose everything. Not because politicians are evil, not because of corruption, not because someone stole the money, but because of mathematics. Cold, hard, indifferent mathematics. And mathematics doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It doesn't care about your vote or your needs or your plans. Here's how every government promise dies. 4 stages. The pattern never changes. Only the timeline changes. Only the names change. But the outcome, identical every single time throughout history. Once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. You'll recognize it everywhere. Stage 1, a government makes a promise: pensions for workers, health care for the elderly, security in retirement, financial stability for your golden years. Don't worry, we got you covered. And here's the key: the promise actually works at the beginning. This is crucial. The math is sound at inception. You have a young population, lots of workers paying in, very few retirees collecting. Tax revenue exceeds benefit obligations by a comfortable margin. The system is genuinely solvent. Politicians celebrate. They take credit. They campaign on protecting these sacred programs. The promise becomes politically untouchable. Everyone believes it will last forever because why wouldn't it? It's working perfectly right now. Stage 2. The initial promise wasn't enough, so they expand it. More benefits, earlier retirement ages, automatic cost of living increases, better coverage, disability gets added, spousal benefits, survivor benefits. The promise grows and grows. Meanwhile, something shifts. Demographics change. Fewer babies are born. Medical advances mean people live longer, collecting benefits for 20, 25, 30 years instead of 5 or 10. The ratio of workers to retirees collapses. Suddenly, the math stops working. Revenue no longer exceeds obligations. The system starts running deficits, but nobody adjusts the promise. Nobody scales back the benefits to match the new reality. Instead, they adjust the funding. They raise taxes. They borrow. They manipulate the accounting. They raid other funds. They use creative budget tricks. They push the problem into the future, always into the future, because admitting the promise is broken means political death. So they hide it. They delay it. They hope economic growth will solve it. It won't. Stage 3, the gap between promises and resources becomes impossible to hide. Trust funds start depleting. Deficits explode. The government faces a choice, two options and only two. Break the promise explicitly. Tell people we can't pay what we promised. Cut benefits now significantly to match available revenue. Or destroy the currency. Print money to cover the gap. Debase the dollar. Create inflation. Pay people in currency that's worth less and less. And here's what you need to understand. They never, ever choose to break the promise explicitly, not willingly, not until they have absolutely no other choice, because cutting benefits means riots, means losing elections, means political annihilation. So they choose the other path. They keep the nominal promise. Your check arrives. The amount on paper is there, but they destroy what that check can buy. They pay you in money that's worth less than worthless. Stage 4. Hyperinflation, currency collapse, or both. Benefits continue arriving on schedule, but they purchase nothing. A pension that once paid for a comfortable retirement now buys a week of groceries, then a day, then a meal, then nothing. The promise is technically kept. The government can say, we never missed a payment, but it's meaningless. Completely meaningless. Millions who planned their entire lives around that guarantee discover they've been lied to. Not by conspiracy, but by arithmetic. Because you cannot print prosperity. You cannot promise what you cannot pay. And eventually, always eventually, reality forces the truth. This isn't theory. This isn't speculation. This isn't some doomsday prediction from someone trying to scare you. This is historical record. This is what happens every single time without exception. Let me prove it with 3 examples that will make this crystal clear. Example 1, Weimar Germany, 1920s. The pattern compressed into less than a decade. Watch how fast this moves when the conditions are right. Stage 1, Germany after World War I, massive war reparations owed to the Allies. But they also have extensive social programs inherited from Bismarck's era. Pensions for workers, benefits for disabled veterans, health care, welfare systems. In 1919, these programs work. They function. The paper mark is stable. $1 equals 4 marks. The social contract is functioning. Tax revenue covers obligations. The promises are sustainable. Workers trust the system completely. Stage 2 arrives fast. By 1921, the bills come due. War reparations payments to France and Britain, reconstruction of bombed cities, social spending for millions of veterans and widows. The government can't cut benefits because the people won't allow it. They've just lost a war. The population is devastated. Cutting benefits to war widows and disabled veterans, political suicide. So they print. The Reichsbank starts expanding the money supply. Inflation begins slowly, 3% annual inflation in 1920, then 5%, then 8%. Noticeable but manageable. But pensions still arrive on time. Benefits get paid every month. Workers think they're protected. Politicians claim they're defending the people from hardship. Then stage 3 hits like a freight train. 1922, the printing accelerates dramatically. World War I casualties have destroyed the worker-to-dependent ratio. Hundreds of thousands of working-age men are dead on the battlefield. The tax base is crippled. Revenue can't possibly cover obligations, so they print more. And here's where the death spiral begins. Pensioners notice their benefits buy less food, less fuel, so they demand increases. The government complies. They raise the nominal pension amounts, which requires printing more money, which causes more inflation, which triggers more demands for increases. A vicious cycle that feeds on itself, accelerating exponentially. Stage 4, 1923, total collapse. October 1923, inflation hits 299 billion% in 1 month. Read that again. 299 billion% in 30 days. Pensions that could purchase a house in 1919 can't buy a postage stamp in 1923. Retirees who trusted the government for their entire lives, who paid into the system for decades, are financially destroyed overnight. People burn currency for warmth because it's cheaper than buying firewood. Wallpaper is more valuable than cash. Life savings vanish overnight. The social contract doesn't just break, it disintegrates. Total time from stable system to complete collapse, 4 years. Think about that. 4 years from everything's fine to your life savings are worthless. Example 2, the Soviet Union. But maybe that's just Germany, right? War-torn nation, defeated in war, unique circumstances. Surely it can't happen to a superpower. Let's test that theory. The Soviet Union, global superpower, nuclear arsenal, space program, extensive social welfare that was the centerpiece of communist ideology, guaranteed pensions, free health care, subsidized housing, full employment. The state controlled everything, and for decades it worked. Stage 1 runs from the 1950s through the 1970s. Soviet pensions are guaranteed by the state. Full employment is mandatory. Retirement benefits are ironclad. Healthcare is free. Housing is provided. The promise is backed by the full power of a superpower state that controls 1/6 of the Earth's land mass. And it functions. For 30 years, it genuinely functions. Retirees live modestly but securely. The system works. Stage 2 emerges in the 1980s. The system starts cracking. Working-age population growth slows. Military spending explodes, trying to match Reagan's arms race. The Soviet-Afghan war drains resources and morale. Then oil prices collapse in 1986. The USSR's primary export revenue disappears. But pension promises remain unchanged. Can't cut Babushka's pension. Can't reduce benefits to Afghan war veterans. Political disaster. So they print rubles, they manipulate exchange rates, they raid gold reserves, they use creative accounting. The government keeps the promise alive through monetary tricks. Stage 3, late 1980s, the gap becomes a chasm. Store shelves empty, basic goods vanish. But pensions still get paid. The rubles arrive on schedule every month. Retirees line up at state banks, collect their money, then stand in bread lines for 6 hours because the rubles are becoming worthless. Inflation is devouring purchasing power faster than the government can raise nominal payments. You're holding currency. That means nothing. You have money, but nothing to buy with it. Stage 4, 1991, the Soviet Union collapses. The ruble becomes literal toilet paper. People use it in bathrooms because it's softer than newsprint. Pensions continue being paid nominally, but they're meaningless. Elderly workers who gave their entire lives to the state die in poverty, freezing in apartments because they can't afford heat. The promise was kept technically all the way until it wasn't. Total timeline? About a decade from functional system to complete failure. A superpower, nuclear weapons, central planning, total state control. Didn't matter, the pattern played out exactly the same. Example 3, Greece, 2009-2015. Still not convinced? Let's get even closer to home. Both geographically and chronologically. Democratic nation, modern economy, Western values. 21st century Greece, 2009. Member of the European Union, developed nation, democracy, rule of law, modern financial systems, and an incredibly generous social welfare system. Stage 1, Greece joins the euro in 2001. Generous pension system already in place. Average pension is 96% of final salary. Retirement age as low as 50 for some public sector jobs. Government workers get guaranteed benefits. It's sustainable as long as economic growth continues, and borrowing stays cheap. And for almost a decade, it does. Greece borrows at German interest rates because they share a currency. Everything looks fine. Stage 2, the 2008 financial crisis hits. Greek economy contracts sharply, tax revenue craters, unemployment spikes, but pension obligations stay fixed. Benefits are guaranteed by law, often by the Constitution itself. Greece can't print euros because monetary policy is controlled by the European Central Bank in Frankfurt, so they borrow massively. Debt to GDP ratio explodes. 100%, 120%, 140%, 160%. But pensions keep getting paid every month. The promise holds. Politicians claim everything is under control. International lenders keep lending. Stage 3, 2010. The music stops. Greece can't borrow anymore. Interest rates spike from 4% to 7% to 12% to 25%. Markets shut them out completely. Default becomes imminent. The European Union steps in with bailouts, hundreds of billions in emergency loans from Germany, France, and the IMF. But there's a price: austerity, pension cuts, retirement age increases, benefit reductions. People who worked 40 years for the state face 30% to 45% benefit reductions overnight. Benefits that were constitutionally guaranteed get slashed by executive decree. Riots erupt. Athens burns. Syntagma Square is occupied. But the cuts happen anyway because the mathematics demand it. Stage 4, 2015. Capital controls. Banks limit withdrawals to $60 per day. Pensions get paid in installments because there's not enough liquidity in the banking system. Retirees stand in bank lines unable to access their own accounts. Can't pay rent. Can't buy medicine. Can't afford food. ATMs run dry. The system doesn't completely collapse because the EU props it up with continuous bailouts. But the promise shattered, absolutely shattered. Millions who planned their entire retirement around guaranteed benefits are betrayed by mathematics. Greece was a developed Western nation, European Union member, democratic institutions, modern economy, advanced legal system. None of it mattered. The pattern doesn't care about your political system. It doesn't care about your military. It doesn't care about your intentions or your values. The pattern is pure mathematics, and mathematics is completely indifferent to hope. 3 examples, 1 pattern, 0 exceptions. 3 examples, 3 completely different political systems, 3 different time periods, 3 different continents, identical outcome every time. Now let me show you where Social Security is in this exact same pattern. And I'm going to use the government's own numbers, the Social Security Administration's own reports. This isn't speculation. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is official data that anyone can verify. Social Security, Stage 1, 1935-1955. Stage 1, 1935. Franklin Roosevelt signs Social Security into law. The initial promise is actually quite modest compared to what it would become. Retirement benefits starting at age 65. Life expectancy in 1935, 61 years old. Most people die before they collect a dime. The system is literally designed around the expectation that most workers won't live long enough to receive benefits. The worker-to-beneficiary ratio is 42 workers paying in for every 1 person collecting benefits. 42 to 1. The math works beautifully. Revenue exceeds obligations by enormous margins. The trust fund grows. The promise is completely sustainable. Check. Verified. Stage 1 complete. Social Security, Stage 2, 1956-2010. Stage 2 begins immediately and accelerates over decades. Watch how the promise expands while the demographics collapse. 1956. Disability benefits added. Now you can collect even if you're not 65. 1965. Medicare created alongside Social Security. Healthcare promises layered on top of income promises. 1972, cost of living adjustments made automatic. Benefits now increase every year based on inflation. Early retirement at age 62 becomes standard. Survivor benefits expand. Spousal benefits expand. Benefits expand. Coverage expands. Promises multiply. Sounds wonderful, except watch what happens to the demographics. This is where the death spiral locks in. 1945. Worker to beneficiary ratio is still 41 to 1. 1950. Drops to 16 to 1. 1960. 5.1 workers per beneficiary. 1980. 3.2 to 1. 2005. 3.3 to 1. Today, January 2026. 2.8 workers per beneficiary. The ratio has collapsed from 42.1 down to less than 3.1. The math has completely broken, but the promises keep expanding. Meanwhile, the government's response is textbook Stage 2 behavior. They raised the payroll tax. In 1937, the rate was 2%. Today, it's 12.4%. They raised it 6 times. They increased the wage cap repeatedly. They delayed the full retirement age incrementally from 65 to 67. They borrowed from the trust fund to pay for other programs. They used every accounting trick available, but it's not enough. The 2025 Trustees Report, released by the Social Security Administration in June 2025, projects the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund depletes in 2033. When that happens, incoming payroll taxes cover only 77% of scheduled benefits, 23% automatic cut unless Congress acts. But here's the critical insight. Congress won't act, not meaningfully, because meaningful reform requires political suicide. Cut benefits, electoral death. Raise taxes dramatically, electoral death. So they'll delay, form commissions, hold hearings, blame each other, push the crisis forward until they can't anymore. Check. Stage 2 verified. Social Security, Stage 3, 20 and 10 present. Stage 3, This is where we are right now. January 2026, the gap between promises and resources is completely undeniable. The trust fund is actively depleting, lost $67 billion in 2024 alone. That's not a future projection. That's current reality from the trustees' report. The combined trust fund balance sits at $2.72 trillion. Sounds like a lot until you realize it's burning at over $60 billion per year and accelerating. The demographic collapse is locked in. The baby boomers are fully retired. 10,000 people turn 65 every single day. Meanwhile, the U.S. fertility rate hit 1.66 in 2025, well below the replacement rate of 2.1. The worker base is shrinking. The beneficiary base is exploding. The ratio continues falling, projected to hit 2 workers per beneficiary by 2030. Just 4 years away, the government faces the choice, the same choice every government faces at stage 3. Cut benefits explicitly or debase the currency. And just like Weimar, just like the Soviets, just like Greece, they will choose debasement. Not immediately, not honestly. They'll call it something else. Quantitative easing, yield curve control, emergency monetary policy. But it's printing. Same mechanism, different label. Why will they choose printing? Because it's politically survivable. You can't campaign on "I cut grandma's Social Security." But you can campaign on "I kept the promise," even if that promise is paid in devalued dollars. The average voter doesn't understand monetary debasement, but they absolutely understand benefit cuts. So the political incentive structure guarantees they choose inflation. The Federal Reserve will step in. They'll monetize the debt required to keep Social Security solvent. They'll expand the money supply to cover the gap between payroll tax revenue and benefit obligations. Your check will arrive. That's the key point. The nominal amount will be there. They might even increase it with cost of living adjustments, but the dollar itself will be worth less. Significantly less. Check. Stage 3 verified. Loss of control confirmed. This is already happening. You can see it in the numbers right now. Food prices up 23% since 2020. Housing up 37%, healthcare up 29%. Real purchasing power for Social Security recipients has declined every single year since 2010, despite nominal COLA increases. The 2026 COLA is 2.8%. Sounds protective until you realize real inflation for retirees based on actual spending patterns runs closer to 6% to 8% annually. The gap widens every year, slowly, quietly, then suddenly. And here's the mechanism they don't explain. Social Security uses the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners for COLA calculations, the CPIW, not the index that measures what retirees actually spend money on. The CPIW understates housing costs, understates medical costs, uses substitution. If beef gets expensive, the index assumes you'll buy chicken. If chicken gets expensive, you'll buy beans. The formula systematically understates real inflation experienced by beneficiaries. 2023, real inflation for retirees estimated at 9% to 11% based on actual spending. Official COLA, 3.2%, gap of 6 to 8 percentage points. 2024, real inflation approximately 7%. Official COLA, 2.5%, gap of 4.5%. 2025, real inflation around 6%. COLA, 1.8%. The gap compounds annually. As the trust fund depletes, pressure to suppress COLA calculations will intensify. They'll adjust the methodology, change the formula, find technical justifications for lower inflation numbers, not because of conspiracy, because of budgetary necessity, because admitting real inflation means admitting they need to print even more money, which accelerates the debasement, which proves the promise is dying. This is the stage 3 trap. You get your payment, but it purchases less every year. And the gap accelerates because the underlying problem is mathematically unsolvable within the current structure. Undeniable, verified. We are here right now. If you're receiving Social Security now or planning to in the next 10 years, here's your reality, unfiltered. Your benefits will likely be paid. The nominal dollar amounts on your statement will probably arrive every month. The government will maintain the appearance of keeping the promise, but those dollars will buy less. Significantly less. The purchasing power erosion will accelerate after 2033 when trust fund depletion forces monetary expansion. If you're living on Social Security alone, You will fall below the poverty line. Not because payments stop, but because inflation outpaces COLA adjustments. Food, housing, healthcare, utilities, all rising faster than your benefits. The gap compounds annually until the purchasing power is gone. If you're supplementing Social Security with savings, those savings get eroded too. Bonds paying 3% lose value when inflation runs 8%. You're losing 5% per year in real terms. Cash loses even more. If you're currently working and paying into Social Security, you're funding a system that will give you far less than you paid in real terms. The worker-to-beneficiary ratio guarantees it. The pattern is clear. The mathematics are final. Stage 3 is here. Stage 4 is coming. The only question is, how fast?